Hey, everybody, welcome back to You're the Cure. I've got Dr. Tom Cowan today. We haven't talked to Dr. Cowan in so long. Years ago, I had him on multiple times because he wrote this trilogy. Started with this book right here, Human Heart, Cosmic Heart. I don't even know what year this was, but many, many years ago. Amazing book, one of my most favorite books. It's on my reading list that I give to doctors that call me, asking me, what they want to learn something outside the traditional, conventional way of thinking. Boom. I give them one on stomach acid from Jonathan Wright because I just love that book. But then this one, it's awesome. So we're going to talk about this heart disease thing. And what got me thinking, because we've actually talked to Dr. Cowan about this before in this book, but I've recently had three different grandmothers who are my patient come and ask me about their granddaughters who have been going to their pediatrician and they're checking the cholesterol. And I'm talking 8, 9, 10-year-old granddaughters. And the cholesterol is quote unquote high. And the kids are scared asking grandma about it. It just shocked me. So then I looked into this a little bit. And yes, it's a recommendation now for these pediatricians. But before we jump in and ask Dr. Tom Cowan to come on, I just want to read something real quick. I found this fascinating. It kind of set the stage for our conversation. A study just came out. This is a 470,000 person study. What they're looking at was sunscreen. And their conclusion was they found that sunscreen users faced a dramatically higher risk of melanoma, basal cell carcinoma, and squamous cell carcinoma, which I'm pretty sure that's the reason people use sunscreen, is to decrease the risk of those things. And I'm not going to go off into that study. If you want to look it up, it's UK Biobank study. You can go find that. That just came out. But it kind of reminded me of some other things, like a quote from Dr. Charles Sidney Burwell, 1935 to 1949. He was the dean of Harvard Medical School and a cardiologist. And he was talking to the graduating class, or I think it was an incoming class, actually. And he said, half of what we're going to teach you is wrong and half is right. Our problem is we don't know which half is which. That's the dean of Harvard Medical School talking to the medical students. There was a study. This is Mayo Clinical Proceedings. And this was August of 2013. The name of the study, A Decade of Reversal, an analysis of 146 contraindicated medical practices. Not going to go into this study, but I'll tell you the main point of it is they went and looked at standard of care, quote unquote. This is what doctors are legally bound to follow, standard of care guidelines. Looked at over 340 of them, I think it was. And 146, it was about 40% of standard of care practices were completely contraindicated when you went and looked in the medical literature. It didn't translate to standard of care policy changes. And you can go read that yourself. Here's another study, why most published research findings are false. This is August of 2005 from the journal PulseMed. And this is by Dr. John Ioannidis. He's at Stanford. I think you want a Nobel Prize even. But from his article, he said there's increasing concern that in modern research, false findings may be the majority or even the vast majority of published research claims. And then here's a final quote. This is from an article, Coronary Heart Disease, Doing the Wrong Things. This was in Nutrition Today, July of 1985. The author of this quote, George Mann, MD, professor, nutritional biochemist, Vanderbilt University, internist, trained in nutrition and diabetes. He was the associate director of the Framingham study. For medical people, they know this study. It's a huge study. Doctors know it. They quote it all the time. Framingham, Massachusetts. But here's the quote. A generation of citizens has grown up since the Ansel Keys diet heart hypothesis was launched as official dogma. They have been misled by the greatest scientific deception of our time, the notion that consumption of animal fat causes heart disease. And guys, the point of these articles and quotes I'm throwing at you is to just remember, and I think most of our listeners do, that there's a way that seems right to a man. We think we're so smart and we come with conclusions, and then we get stuck in these conclusions, even when the evidence is clear that we're getting the worst outcomes, which we do, especially when it comes to heart disease. So just being able to open our mind to the possibility that these institutional way of thinking could be wrong. And so I applaud folks who think outside the box, and Dr. Tom Cowan is one of the best outside the box thinkers and educators, and we need a whole lot more Dr. Tom Cowan's in the world, in my opinion, especially training our up-and-coming medical students. So, Dr. Tom, thank you so much for coming on the program. I know you're retired now. You just said you're just sitting around not doing anything. But I'm thinking that's giving you more time to contemplate these deep things of life. And what you contemplated and put into this book, Human Heart, Cosmic Heart, guys, I highly recommend you go get it and read it. Blew me away when I first heard it and read it years ago. So we can talk about anything, and I love talking with you because you are a thinker and you do think outside the box. But I really did want to touch on the theory that you propose in this book. The heart's not even a pump that we traditionally thought it was. And the physics just don't work out. The flow dynamics of fluid moving through pipes, the math doesn't work. And I just kind of want to go back and review some of that for all the new listeners we have, which we have so many more new listeners who are coming out of the conventional mindset and coming into more of what I'd say is alignment with the truth. So thank you for coming back to the show. And we can jump in wherever you'd want, but maybe why'd you even start to look at this heart theory of heart disease?
Yeah, well, thanks, Ben. It's good to talk again. I mean, when I look in retrospect, and at the time I wasn't scientifically literate enough to know what I was doing. Hopefully I am a little bit more now. What I realized is that the process of inquiry, and sometimes we call it science, is really the process of finding claims and then attempting to falsify them. And you don't need an alternative explanation in order to falsify a claim. And in fact, it's actually was the key to learning things for me, and I think for a lot of people, when I really landed on, I'm going to look at claims and attempt to falsify them. And by the way, if a claim can't be falsified, it's a belief. And I have nothing against beliefs. People, all of us believe stuff, but we need to make that distinction. So let me give you an example so everybody knows what I'm talking about. Imagine an 18-year-old Asian fellow whose parents are Caucasian, and then one day he's looking through their closet and finds adoption papers they got him from an orphanage in China. And he realized he never saw a picture of his mother pregnant. He goes and asks his parents, yeah, we got you from an orphanage. We were waiting to tell you, and it's all true, etc. And then he goes to his best friend and says, I'm a little shook up. I just found out I was adopted. And the friend says, so who are your real parents? And he says, I don't know. They got me from an orphanage in China. And his friend says, until you tell me who your real parents are, I don't believe you are adopted. That you laughed, I think, because you would probably agree that's nuts. That's a thought disorder. But I can tell you the number of people, particularly doctors and so-called scientists, and in this case, cardiologists, who I say there's no evidence that blocked arteries cause heart attacks, or that the heart muscle acts as a pressure propulsion device, or that chickenpox is caused by a virus, or I could name a whole lot of other things. And the first thing they say is, so how does the blood move? Or what causes heart attacks? Or what causes chickenpox? In other words, who are your real parents? And tell me who your real parents are. I'm going with the virus story. I'm going with the blocked artery story. And so that's a crazy way to do life. So if we look at this, that book had two main points. One, the heart is not a pressure propulsion device, which we sometimes call a pump, but there's lots of different kinds of pumps. Meaning, as we were taught, and we both were trained as medical doctors, so I would love it if you disagree with my characterization of the claim. We're told that the heart squeezes, it's a muscle, and that propels the blood around the body. right? That's
Correct.
a pressure propulsion device.
Yes.
So that's the claim. Now, if you look at that, the first thing that struck me was we got like 10,000 miles of pipes, right? Blood vessels, some of which seem to be about the internal diameter as the stuff going through, like red blood cells. So in order to squeeze sticky fluid through 10,000 miles of pipes, that would be a hell of a push. And I thought, you cannot generate that much pressure to make that blood go through. So that was the first thing. The second thing was the blood actually is going the fastest as it enters the heart and the same speed as it exits the heart. You can measure that. And then it slows down as it goes through the arteries, arterioles, comes to the capillaries, and essentially stops and does a shimmy back and forth, right? So the supposedly offload food and pick up waste products, and then it gets going again, right?
Yep, that's it.
So if you think about it, if you're going to push from behind and go slower and slower and slower and stop and then get going again, how can the pump possibly be where it's going the fastest? Like, wouldn't you put the pump where it stopped? That's where you need to get things going again. No farmer would have a tank and then flowing down to the garden and then having to get the water back up to the tank and put the pump in the tank. Like that's goofy.
Yeah.
So that was like, that can't be. And then the third thing was, if you look at the outflow tube of the left ventricle, it's called the aortic arch, shaped like McDonald's arch. If you think about it, so the heart is in diastole, relaxed, and then it squeezes, that's the pump, systole, and then it pushes the blood through the aortic arch. If you have a garden hose shaped like an arch, and you turn the spigot on full blast, and the garden hose can expand or move, what's it going to do?
Yeah, it blows that arch straight up.
It straightens.
Yeah.
But when I worked in a cardiac cath lab in college, just for money, and every time the systole, the aortic arch would bend in. And that's so I said, how come the arch bends in? It should straighten if the blood is being pushed through it. And they just said, well, that's the way it does, which I knew that because I could see it. And that is incompatible with a pressure propulsion device.
Yep.
So at that point, whether I knew or not how the blood moves, like the adoption guy, I knew that the heart is not pushing the blood through anywhere. That the movement of the blood has to come from somewhere else. And in fact, it has to come from at the site of the tissues, because that's where the blood stopped. So I didn't know for 20 years what that was, but something is moving the blood, and then it goes like millions or hundreds or thousands of capillaries, and it coalesces into an inferior vena cava, right?
Yep.
And just like a river, you go from a wetland to a river, it goes faster and faster and faster. Why? Because the volume is being compressed. That's called Bernoulli's principle. The smaller the diameter, the faster the flow. And so that's why the blood goes faster and faster and faster. It comes to the heart. The heart is like a tank with expandable walls, right? So it comes in, the heart is relaxed, the blood comes in because it's being propelled from below, expands the wall, and then there's a positive pressure built up in the heart, right, in the chamber, and a vacuum on the other side of the gate, right? Because there's no blood there.
Yep.
That pressure differential opens the gate, sucks the aortic arch in, and the blood essentially falls down to the tissues. And then there's a quote pumping action or a movement at the capillary. We could talk about that. That gets it going again, comes back up to the heart. So that's essentially how a hydraulic ram works. You have blood flowing into a tank, expands the wall, the pressure differential opens the gate, the blood is distributed to different sections, the water falls down, it stops, they use something to get the water going again, and that's how it works. It's a very efficient energy, like low utilization of energy system. That's why the muscle doesn't wear out, because all it's doing is expanding and contract, is not pushing. And all you have to do is create flow at the bottom. And that's done basically because water forms this gel, which is negatively charged, and that creates a battery-like effect, and the positive charges repel and they start moving, and it can't go back up the artery, so it goes up the vein, and that just starts it moving again.
So essentially a hydraulic pump that's pulling the blood to a degree, and this charge you just described kind of pushing that fluid along.
Impetus.
Yep.
There's a chart, and Gerald Pollack showed this. You take a beaker of water and you put here's where it gets interesting. You put suspend a hydrophilic tube in the water, right? Beaker of water, hydrophilic tube, and the water in the tube separates into a negatively charged gel, and the positive charges go into the bulk water in the middle. And that positive charges repel each other and start moving, and so you get a flow through the tube. And here's where it gets interesting as far as so what we call congestive heart failure is a failure of that mechanism to start the blood moving. So the blood falls down. So you can do experiments with this beaker, and you can shine the sun on it, and the water moves faster. You put the beaker on the earth, the water moves faster because it separates the charges. You put your hands on the beaker, it's like laying on of hands, the water moves faster, the blood moves faster. You put your dog or your cat next to it, most dogs, and the blood moves faster, the water moves faster. You put your cell phone next to the beaker, the water stops moving. Why? Because the radiation from the cell phone, it prohibits the water from forming its natural gel. So, and there's other things too, but so if somebody has poor flow, that means they're not being charged. They're not connecting to the sun and the earth. They're not connecting to other people. They're not eating good food. They're not moving. They're, not connecting to nature and animals and stuff. They're in a technological toxic soup, which is preventing the water from forming its natural charged state.
Yes.
And we call that congestive heart failure, which is why I never had to treat it with drugs, because if you just get the person to do those things, they flow, and then the whole system starts working, and it's all fine.
Yeah. And guys, the reason this is so important is because this theory of clogged arteries causing heart attacks, like Dr. Cowan said, you don't have to come up with an alternative theory, but it's kind of fun when you start to investigate and think outside the box, and you can actually propose an alternative theory that makes way more sense, but it's intricately related to this understanding that we're not dealing with this pressure pump. It's a hydraulic, and the charge, this gel like state of water with a charge that repels and therefore moves and flows. Dr. Cowan's it's so essential to understanding what we'll talk about here in a minute regarding when this thing breaks down, how's a heart attack created, and why don't you have kidney attacks and liver attacks and all these other organ attacks. And we'll talk about that in a second. But let's clarify a little bit. You mentioned Gerald Pollack. For people that don't know about this fourth phase of water, structured water, easy water, exclusion zone water. I mean, you've talked about it some, but maybe clarify a little bit more and give some of that historical context with Dr. Pollack, what he discovered there.
So, I mean, at this point, I know you read quotes that 50% of what we learned in science and medicine, biology is wrong, and 50% is right. I'm not sure which 50% is right anymore.
Right.
So one of the things we learned is that all substance can exist in three phases: solid, liquid, and gas. I'm not sure, like maybe fourth grade, we learned that. Mm-hmm. So you have solid copper, molten or liquid copper, and gaseous copper. And with water, you got ice, that's solid, water, and then steam. And I don't know about you, Ben, but I was told that 70% of the intercellular volume or contents is water.
Yes.
Something like that.
Yep.
Okay. So I was an ER doctor for a while, and I said, okay, which phase is it in? Right? Because there's three. It's like a multiple choice. So it's not ice, right? Because that's ridiculous. It's not steam. Like we don't have steam in our tissues. So it must be liquid water. That's what we were told.
Yeah.
Now, the first thing that struck me about that, it doesn't feel like we're like bags of water sloshing around. I don't know about you, but I don't have that sense. And so then I saw people like bayoneted and stabbed and shot, You know how many times I saw water squirting out of their tissues?
Zero.
Blood, yes, that's a liquid-ish, but no water. They said it's water, not blood. And so I said, well, where's the water? Well, never mind. Anyways, there's a thing called Jello, right? People have heard of Jello. They say it's 97% water. So which phase is it in? Well, it's not ice, it's not water, and it's not a gas. And the only thing you can say is there's another phase of water called a gel phase, or has other names, like you said. And interestingly, if you stick a pin into Jello, nothing squirts out. And interestingly, Jello doesn't have a cell membrane. Like we don't have a cell membrane. We told we do, but we don't actually. And all of the water in living tissues is in this gel phase. And if it isn't, if it liquefies or hardens, you got a problem. Like if you got a knee and it's supposed to be in a gel phase and it turns into liquid water, you've got, quote, fluid on your knee, and we know there's something wrong with your knee. So that's what I mean by, and that gel phase is always charged. And it happens with the interaction of hydrophilic surfaces, like in us, and water with ions, minerals that help facilitate that, and some ambient source of energy, like the sun or the radiation from the earth, and not from cell phones and even toxic thoughts probably interfere with the creation of the gel. So that's what I'm talking about.
Okay. So very similar to how you make Jello, water plus gelatin.
Right.
You've got to have
plus protein.
Yep.
Water plus hydrophilic surface. You change it with heat, and that's what we have, something in us in living systems that organizes the surfaces so that they interact. And that is also the there's no membranes, so there's no sodium potassium pump, there's no cell membrane receptors, opiate receptors, cannabis receptors. It's just different configurations of the gel. That's what determines whether something stays in, like potassium fits in the gel, and just the size of the gel in us excludes sodium. So there's no sodium potassium pump. How do I know that? Because they can strip the outer surface of a cell, and the sodium potassium pump distribution stays the same.
Wow.
There's no pump, even though it's a integral part of modern biology and medicine, Nobel Prizes. We use drugs because they interfere with the sodium potassium pump or stimulate it or inhibit it. It's all hooey, because they proved by stripping the membrane, if there's a pump, it should change the distribution, right? Because that's where the pump is. Doesn't. So they disproved that, and the distribution of the ions is because of the character of the gel.
Okay. Well, let's talk about the character of that gel specifically along those pipes, and maybe more specifically the coronary artery, or somehow let's connect this to what happens in that coronary artery that leads to a death of the heart muscle we call myocardial infarction or heart attack. Can we kind of connect all this to that, however you want to do that?
Right. Except the coronary arteries have basically nothing to do with heart attacks. So it's like I say, if you ask everybody on the street, why does somebody have a heart attack? They say you got these coronary arteries and they get blocked with plaque, and then the blood can't get through, and then you have a heart attack downstream. That's what a cardiologist will say. That's what holistic doctors say. That's what functional doctors will say. That's what internists say. That's what everybody says except me and a few other people. And how did I come to that? So again, let's examine the claim. So there's a number of foundational claims, and I have pictures of this, but I can't show you, but I'll try to describe. First claim, we have a heart, and the blood supply is 3 major coronary arteries, right?
Yep.
All the blood flow goes through those major arteries. They may not say all the blood flow, but certainly the vast majority of it. Second of all, when those arteries get blocked with plaque, again, the blood doesn't get through and you have a heart attack downstream, right? So those are the 2 major claims. So the way I looked at this was, okay, there's something in the blood, and that's what people argue about, whether it's high cholesterol, LDL, or LP(a), or inflammation, or heavy metals, or everybody's arguing about what was the impetus for the formation of the plaque, right?
Yep.
But whatever it is, if it's in the blood, the same blood goes through all the rest of the body, right? There's not a special blood through your coronary arteries.
Yep.
And the arteries are made of the same stuff as your splenic artery, hepatic artery, all the rest of them, right?
Yep.
Same artery, same blood. Therefore, if there's something precipitating, it would precipitate everywhere, because same arteries, same contents should precipitate, and it does. So you get plaque in your splenic artery. So I've asked maybe 100,000 people by now, how many people know somebody with a heart attack? Everybody raise their hand. Bill Clinton, Dick Cheney, Uncle Fred, et cetera. How many people know somebody who had a spleen attack? Nobody. How about a liver attack? Nobody. People say gallbladder attacks, but that's not a ischemic attack. That's a stone stuck in your common bile duct. So there's no organ that has ischemic blood flow blockage attacks, but the heart and the brain, which we call strokes. So why is that? I mean, that's weird, because if they all get plaque, then they should be the same everywhere. So that suggests there's something different about the heart and the spleen, not the coronary arteries or the splenic artery. So that was the first thing. Then, particularly because I wrote that book, about 20% of my patients were heart patients. And I heard this story over and over again. I'm sure you've heard it, Ben. I went for a walk with my wife. I walked up the mountain or the hill and I felt a little something. And the wife made me go to the cardiologist and he did a stress test and some blood work. And he said, I have a 94% blockage of my right coronary artery. And then he wags his finger at him and says, if you block anymore, you're going to have a heart attack. So you got to do a stent or a bypass. I'm sure you've heard that story.
A few times.
Yeah. So I think to myself, okay, if all the blood goes through your major arteries, then you had 6% blood flow to your heart, that part of your heart. How did you walk up that hill? How are you even alive? And you mean if you block from 6%, what, down to 3% or 1%, that's going to kill you? Like that, you got no blood flow to your heart if you got 3%, 6%, even 10%. So that made no sense. So then I go to the literature, which you would think all doctors would. Somebody says the cause of this is blocked arteries. Okay, I'm going to go to autopsy studies since the 40s and see how many of these people who die of a heart attack, right? That's the worst of the worst, actually had a blocked artery to that part of their heart. Should be 100%, right? Because that's what they told us. Mm-hmm. So I looked at every single study that I've ever been able to find, and the lowest was 18% had a blockage, and the highest was 78%, and the best was 41%, of which he could prove that half of them, the blockage came after the heart attack, not before. That means at best, 20% of the people who have a heart attack and die have a blockage leading to that part of the heart before the heart attack. And that doesn't prove that it was the cause, right? It was just there.
Yep.
And so what happened to the other 80%? Why? I mean, we're told if you don't have a blockage, you're good. The reality is every single autopsy study disproves that claim. So at this point, I know that it's got nothing to do with the blocked arteries. That's the so-called thrombogenic theory. And I didn't know why anybody had a heart attack, but I knew it wasn't that. And so that I'll stop there for a minute and see what you think about that.
Well, I just want to maybe clarify for the audience what Dr. Cowan's saying here. So this theory that stuff kind of accumulates on the inside of your pipe, kind of like bacon grease in your drain, your kitchen sink drain, just accumulates, narrows that pipe down to where it's completely blocked, or even if it's 5, 6, 10% flow. That's the theory. But if that were true, then these autopsy cases would have a very distinctive and clear appearance to them, and they don't. Right. So that means something else is going on.
And the flaw of this is it's absolutely not true that all the blood flow to your heart is through these 3 major arteries. In fact, I have a picture, which I can't show you because neither of us can figure out how to do screen share, that shows the actual blood flow to your heart is like a wetland, not a river. Mm-hmm. As I like to say, making all the arteries, all the blood go through those 3 arteries, God would have made it. That's a serious design flaw. And he or whoever it is would never have done that. It's much better to have thousands of small vessels. And so if one gets blocked, and not saying there isn't blockages, but it has no consequence for the health of your heart. Now, here's where it's interesting too, because conventional medicine and alternative medicine mostly has inverted solutions and call them problems. So I ask people, I can ask you, if you got a weak pipe and you burst it and you have a bleed, that's a catastrophe, right?
Yep.
So if you've got a weak gel layer because you don't get out in the sun and you don't eat good food and you don't move and you don't ground to the earth and you've got toxic thoughts and you hate your family and blah, blah, blah. So you got a weak gel layer. Your body says, I got to shore this up. What's it going to do?
Start laying down some hardening stuff.
Laying down some. So the plaque is the therapy for a weak gel.
Mm.
It's not a disease. In fact, here's something which may surprise you. I'm not even convinced anymore we have cholesterol in our bodies. Now, how did I get to that? Or, by the way, testosterone or insulin or estrogen or vitamin A or omega-3 fats, or I could go on and on.
Or atoms.
Or atoms, right. That's all the cult of the bouncing billiard ball. Right. But how did I come to that? So I looked up the paper. I know the one on testosterone the best, but it's the same with cholesterol and omega-3s and all the rest. How did they find testosterone in a living person? Now, I'm going to differentiate two words here, which are important. Find versus conjure. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I find these glasses. Conjure means I make something which wasn't there. Right?
Yep.
Okay, so I go to the paper, Nobel Prize for discovering testosterone. But again, it's the same with cholesterol, LP little a. So they took a testicle, ground it up, mixed it with some acid, mixed it with some base, washed it with ether 3 times, centrifuged it, flushed it with acetone 7 times, because when the guy did 6 times, he didn't get anything, put it on an electrophoresis, got a band, did an analysis of the band, and said it's a chemical which we call testosterone. So I showed that to an analytical chemist, right? And said, how do you know, because this is science, right? We're supposed to control everything. How do you know that all those steps didn't make something appear which wasn't there in your testicle? Right?
Yeah.
You know what the answer is? He doesn't know.
Yeah.
Because he said, but Tom, you moron, you can't find it if you don't do those things. Right. You can't find it. That's called conjuring it up, which is actually what the word pharmacopoeia, it's sorcery.
Yeah.
Now, people say to me, well, are you saying that testosterone doesn't do anything? Right? That's the proof that we have it in our testicle. No, I'm not saying that. If you have somebody who's sad and you give them cocaine, I never did this, but I heard this, they feel happier, at least for a while. Is that because you have cocaine is what makes you feel happy? No.
Yeah.
Then they say, yeah, but if you take a testicle, you can do this process and get testosterone. Whereas if you start with a toenail, you don't get it. That proves there must be testosterone in your testicle. Right. I can take wheat berries and I can process them and I can make bread. And I can start with cabbage leaves and I can process them and I can't make bread. And that proves there's little breads inside a wheat berry.
Yeah, I'm tracking.
There's no evidence that we have these things in us. They are conjured up superstitions to make you think that we're some sort of biochemistry set.
Yeah. Yep. And that's a whole nother conversation of what,
That's a whole nother. But
how,
anyways,
yeah.
so that the idea that blocked arteries cause heart attack has been falsified, which then explains why bypasses don't work and stents have been proven useless, as the headlines of the New York Times said. They don't increase your longevity. They don't prevent further heart attacks. The only study that actually did stents on people with chest pain, and then the other half, they had chest pain, they did a catheter, they told them they did a stent, but they didn't. Took it out. This Lancet 2018. 8 weeks later, same amount of chest pain. So stents have been proven useless because it has nothing to do with that. There's something energetically, metabolically, the heart doesn't get enough energy. And the heart is the main energy generator. It creates the electromagnetic toroidal field that all the other organs entrain on. So it has to be the strongest field of the body. That's actually, interestingly, goes out about 6 feet around your body, like a toroidal field, which is why they wanted us to keep 6 feet apart so that people wouldn't connect with their hearts to each other. It wasn't because of an imaginary virus. They knew that. But so what's happening is your heart energy is contracting, and that eventually causes it's like an electrical, it's like your battery is running out, and then you build up probably some sort of acid, and that poisons your heart, and that's called a heart attack. It's like a leg cramp, except your leg stops and your heart can't.
Right. And so the very foundational piece of this, I'll say, theory, it's really all about electrical charge, energy.
We are batteries, and that we're a water battery with an earth element in it, which is like salts. There's various kind of salts. As I think you pointed out, there's no atoms. This whole atomic theory was you know, it's interesting, Ben. I don't know if you've heard this. There's 2 theories of creation, only 2. One, which is based on creation of humanity. One is the atom theory, ADAM, right? Something called God, supernatural, some force that we don't really understand, literally created out of the water and out of earth this being called Adam. And all the other beings too, all the other species. Yep. All this was an act of supernatural creation, and then came the story of humanity, right? That's the one creation story.
Yep.
Now there's another creation story, which is also interestingly called the Adam story. It's a mockery. So they called it ATOM story. And that story goes like this. 12.6 billion years ago, that's 3 sixes, so you know it's the devil.
Yep.
There was nothing. And then a car backfired. Never mind where they got the car. And then everything came into being. And there were these little atoms, like billiard balls. And they started bouncing around randomly, and they would interact, and they would form a molecule, and then they would form a chemical, and then they would form a bigger chemical, and then an organic chemical, and then an imaginary virus, and then a bacteria, and then a snake, and then a gorilla, and then Uncle Harry. And all this is random. And Uncle Harry was formed the same time as Aunt Sue, otherwise the whole thing wouldn't work, and they have to start the whole show over again. And none of this has any meaning. It's just bouncing billiard balls. Get over it. You're just random nonsense. So you get to choose which of those 2 stories you believe in. Here's the thing. All the doctors, all the alternative doctors, all the functional doctors that I know, they believe the ATOM story. They tell you about your omega-3 bouncing billiard balls, and your RAS2 pathways and your mTOR pathways and all this genetic stuff. If you ask them who actually found and how did they find DNA in a living being, they have no idea. I know, it's nonsense. They just conjured it up. There's no DNA. They just made it up. And then they made up the base pairs and they made up the mutations. And then I went to the paper. You know, one of the foundations of our whole science is genes code for proteins, right? You've heard that.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing. Do you know the paper that everybody points to that proved that that's true?
Mm-mm.
Well, I happen to know the paper because that's what I do. So I looked up the paper. First line in the paper. This is the paper that everybody, all the geneticists point to, the paper that proved genes code for proteins. I have it right over there. I could read it if you want. But it says, in this paper, we assumed that segments of DNA called beta cistrons, or what we now call genes, we assume they code for polypeptides called proteins. I thought, wait a minute. If you're going to tell me that this is the foundation of our science, I at least want an experiment or something. There's nothing. They just said it. This is the way it is. And then they figure out there's something like 200,000 proteins and 10,000 genes, even though one gene supposedly codes for one protein. So apparently geneticists aren't good at arithmetic because they've missed, there's 180,000 that don't have a code.
Yeah. So what you're kind of painting the picture here is that our entire field of what we call science is based in a lot of assumptions and theories and thoughts and proclamations and conjuring and perhaps sorcery. And this my insert here is, in conclusion, therefore, all the therapies, quote unquote, that we have are producing the worst outcomes, and we're the sickest country, dying the youngest. And I mean, just
it can't possibly work because the foundation upon which it's built is, and I can't emphasize this enough, fundamentally flawed. And I'm not saying that testosterone doesn't do anything, or you can't give somebody a chemical called prednisone and it has an effect, right? I didn't say that. And I didn't say people don't get sick. But the reasons, the explanations for this are completely bogus. They're simply made up.
Yeah.
I mean, this is, you know, what's so interesting about this too, and I just did a talk at this conference called The Day the Science Died. And I won't get into the history of this. And we made a song that's like The Day the Music Died. It's basically started with Einstein. It didn't start with him because it goes back. But when he published his special theory of relativity, he said, from now on, science cannot be based on observation or experimentation. It must be based on free inventions of the mind. In other words, making shit up.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what they did. You don't look and say, you know, it's like I say, what is a banana made of? Everybody I know says it's got potassium in it, right?
Yep.
It's made of, I say a banana is made of a peel, and then it's got banana stuff. It's like white. And sometimes has stringy things in it. And that's a banana. And that puts the agency and the power back in your hands, right? I eat a banana because I like it and I feel good when I eat it, or I don't eat it because I don't feel good after I eat it. It feels too sweet and I don't like the feeling of it. So now you know how to live. Whereas if somebody says, you know, Ben, you eat bananas and it upregulates your RAS2 pathway, and that downstream regulates your mTOR gene expression of the homunculus of the hypotenuse. You don't have a clue what anybody's talking about. Neither do they. And all you know is to better buy their supplement, because that's the only thing that's going to help.
Yeah. Oh, it's a whole entire house of cards, basically.
It is a big old house of cards designed to get you not to believe your experience.
Yep.
Here's what happens when I don't get outside, when I don't move my body, when I eat food from, you know, whatever. I don't feel good and I get sick. And then I let these idiots inject me with poison because they have some theory about a virus. And if you ask them how they know there's a virus, they can't even tell you. And you go to the study, and the guy who came up with the way they find viruses said, yeah, you know, we do the same thing without the thing, without the sample, we get the same result. And yet we inject these really deadly poisons into us, making us sick, because we trust that somebody must know more than we do. I tell you, I stopped talking now. I have a cat named Pumpkin, and he doesn't buy any of this. If he can't see it, and he can't smell it, and he can't hear it with his own senses, he doesn't believe it.
Yeah.
And that's how what you do then is you get better and better at it.
Mm.
I know this is good for me because I've been doing this for a while. He can even smell. He won't drink tap water. I got to give him fresh water that I put, you know, stir it in a vortex. Then he smells it. I don't know what he does. He smells it or something. And he knows this is good because he spent his whole life trusting his experience.
Mm, yeah.
I like this stuff. I don't like that other stuff. I'm not drinking it.
Yeah. And we get told to trust something else, and we do.
It's good. You should eat this because it's good.
Yeah.
Upregulates your mTOR pathway.
Yeah.
Great.
Yep. Well, Tom, I mean, we got 5-6 minutes left, whatever it is. This has been great. It's got, I think I can speak for the audience, especially new listeners, hopefully real curious. I want to summarize real quick, and I'm going to butcher a little bit. And I know it's not going to be exactly right, but just for simplicity and for the listener to think about this for a minute, and read the book. Read the book because, and you're going to have to read it 3 or 4 times probably. But I'm just going back to the heart thing. Imagine these tiny or big pipes, whatever. Imagine a pipe, the fluid's flowing. We're talking about a charge on the inner lining of these pipes. I'm going to say the word structured water, but it's this gel-like water. It has a charge to it. That's key. That's essential. That not only is what helps propel this fluid through these thousands and thousands of miles of pipes, but that charge, that gel water substance with the charge, it keeps the pipe healthy. The integrity of the pipe stays healthy when you have that charge. That's a key point. You lose that charge, you lose the flow, and you lose the protective layer, I'll call it. You know, think of like 2 magnets, negative to negative, repels. You can't even, in a big magnet, you can't even touch them. It's such a force in there. So think of it kind of like that. Everything's flowing through, self-propelling through, being repelled off that wall, whether that's microplastics, root canal bacteria, lead from the Flint, Michigan lead pipes, or whatever it is, cholesterol, all the things. It's just flowing right through there because of that charge, that protective layer. That's beautiful. It's awesome. But you lose that charge, suddenly you have stuff bumping up against the wall of your pipe because you don't have the protective layer, and that's damaging that pipe, and you're losing the integrity and structural integrity of that wall, and it's going to start to collapse down on you if you have a hydraulic pump pulling that fluid through. Think of it like a straw. You're sucking a straw. You're going to collapse that straw down. If the wall of that straw gets weakened, it's going to collapse down. So the body's actually trying to stiffen that thing up with calcium, with plaque, with all this hardening of the artery. We got to keep this pipe open because we've lost our gel layer, that protective layer with the charge. That's essential. And then the actual muscle, the cells that are doing the move, expanding and then coming back together, that, think of that heart moving, the actual muscle, that the energy in that structure, in those cells, also starts to be degraded because of all the things that standard Americans do. And Tom's talked about some of that. And so those cells lose their energetic potential to do what they're supposed to do, and they can't do it anymore. And you get even more of a collapse of all the blood vessels that are going through that tissue. The whole thing just collapses in on itself. The blood flow stops and those cells die. That's in a nutshell. That's kind of a rough description. Thank you. You can get all that deeper detail in the book, especially if you're more medically minded, or if you're a physician, a PA, nurse prac out there looking at, read the book. You'll get the deep dive. And I kind of already know this answer, but I want to give you a few minutes here, Tom. Just if you, in all your experience, and it's not just this book, guys, there's other books on autoimmune disease and childhood vaccines, the new biology of water related to cancer. So get all the books. They're awesome. And you can probably follow Tom. He'll tell you how to do that at the end. But Tom, all your experience, years and decades of experience, and obviously y'all can hear Tom thinks outside the box. If you had to boil it down for your average Joe out there, they just want to be healthy. They don't want to necessarily ingest or be injected with things. They don't totally get half of what you just said, but something in there's resonating is, man, there's a simplicity here. God designed this thing, created this thing. And there's a way, there's laws that govern this thing. There's a way this thing just flows. And our ancestors knew it because our ancestors didn't have Alzheimer's and cancer and all the things. If you had to boil it down, where I'm going is energy, which you probably agree with, but what's the best way to steward that energy field? I know you've mentioned it some, but just let's kind of end there. What's the take home message on how can I just go be a healthy human, live my life, all my days, and just when my spirit gets called home and my flesh falls over dead, great. But until that day, I just want to go live with and be vibrant. What would you tell them to do?
Stay away from doctors.
Check.
Unless you got a knife sticking out of your back and your buddy can't get it out, no preventative medicine, no tests, no scans, no vaccines, no pharmaceuticals, unless absolutely there's no other choice, which is 0.1% of cases, if even that. And that is the most important advice anybody can have these days. The system is designed to make you sick. And once you get away from that mindset of that's going to be the place that I look at to be well, there will be a natural inclination for you to say, all right, so what do I do now? What do I eat? What do I move? Where am I going to go with this? Who am I going to go to if I don't not doing well? I heard about this homeopath or this person, Chinese medicine, or go to you or our new biology clinic or something. But once you get out of that, you make this sort of psychic break, you will be freed up to find out where you want to go with your life. It's your life. I have a friend, Kelly Brogan, who says there's only one disease, and that's called victim consciousness. Mm. And I can tell you, I don't know if you would agree with this, Ben. There's only one thing a student doctor cannot believe or do. You can sexually abuse people. You can be an alcoholic. You can be a drug addict. But if you think that the responsibility for people's health is in their own hands, you're gone. That does not fly in at least when I went to medical school. And that's the whole shebang right there. It's up to you. Once you get away from that mindset, you'll figure it out.
Yep. Well, that's the name of the podcast. You're the
You're not a
cure.
victim.
Yep. That victim mentality tells you you got to go find a savior. You got to go find someone to fix you. Give me something. Someone outside of me. Give me something to fix me. When the design
is
is
wrong savior too.
Exactly. Well, that's part of the design.
Yeah. Right.
Disconnect us with that connection to our creator.
Yeah.
Cut that voice off. We can't hear anymore. Yeah. We're so focused. We put something else in that place, and that thing's going to save me, and it can't, and it doesn't.
Yeah. If you want a savior, talk to God.
Amen. It's an incredible design. We're barely scratching the surface, guys. Human heart, cosmic heart theory of heart disease is way more in line with truth, in my opinion. I highly encourage you to read the book. Tom, you mentioned New Biology Clinic. Anything, any other books, any other websites? I don't know if you do social media. I don't really, but my team does. But just any of that kind of stuff. How can people hear more from you?
3 places to find us. One is we have a food company called drcowensgarden.com. And that's where we just find the best food we can get. And then we have like medicines where we have like Strophanthus, which is the heart medicine, and just things that help people. And that's drtomcowan.com. And then we decided to start an online clinic of doctors who, believe it or not, think like this. And we don't believe in that you have a disease. We think you have and are a story. And we want to know what your story is and how we can help you work with that story to make your life better. And that's called the newbiologyclinic.com.
Newbiologyclinic.com.
Yeah.
I love that. And that story.
One of the most fun. I don't actually see people anymore as patients because I'm too far gone for that, probably. But we have 6 doctors and they're way better at it than I am.
Yeah. Well, and I just have to say this, because when you said everybody's a story, everybody has a story, they are a story. And I agree 100%. And see if you agree with this, but in that story, these memories we have, these life experiences we have that create beliefs that we have about ourselves and about others and about God, and whether those beliefs, I would say, are in line with truth versus not the truth. And if it's not the truth, like I believe I'm rejected, that's not true. I mean, but if I believe that is true to me.
Yeah.
But so these life experiences and beliefs, where that translates into the body, I would say, is it puts your nervous system into a state of either tense, tight, you can call it fight or flight if you want, I guess, stress, fight or flight, but that tense, tight, not at ease, versus when you can reframe these experiences and memories and all the things in a way that, again, I would say in alignment with truth, which I believe is a person. God will tell you the truth about that situation and all the things of it. So you can settle this in your heart beliefs. Then this nervous system shifts into a state of ease, contentment, relaxed, calm, whatever word you want to say. And that difference between tight and not tight affects that energetic field that Tom's talking about, down to your gel-like layer, down to all the inner working parts, how sodium and potassium can come in or not in. It's all affected by this energetic thing that affects the gel-like state. And yes, sunshine affects it, and the earth affects it, and whether you're sitting all day or moving, and food and eating real food versus not, and minerals and good water and all the things. But that thought, that heart beliefs, and there's this old book that says, out of the heart flows all issues of life, and guard your heart, for out of it come. I mean, there's so much I mean, we're talking about human heart, cosmic heart, but that title's awesome too. There's this interplay, guys, with your heart beliefs from that life story. So what Tom's talking about, everybody's a story, and we are, but we got to bring the light of truth, and that truth will set you free. It'll bring peace and joy. And then this whole system works better. And dogs are a part of that, and cats are a part of that, and sunshine's a part of that, and other people are a part of that. But ultimately, these heart beliefs about ourselves, God, and others, I think, are at the very core of it all. So, Tom, that's it. I want to throw that in because when you said that, it made me think of that. But thank you for being with us. I know we're out of time, but any parting word would be great.
Yeah, no, that was great, Ben. I tell you, the only thing I maybe disagree with was I'm to the point now where I wouldn't say it's my nervous system that's doing it.
I knew you were going to say that.
Because people say, yeah, it's my brain just couldn't. I have no idea that my brain thinks, right?
Yeah.
And in fact, I think it seems to me when you do that, you're actually separating yourself out from your experienced reality, which is somehow I'm thinking or I'm saying stuff that I believe to be true. I don't know how that comes about.
Yeah.
I don't know what part of me, or I don't even know that there's like a part that's doing that. It's just me. And when I think like that, I think, well, I'm going to do it different or something. If it's my nervous system, well, then you got to take adrenaline or something, or take dopamine, L-Dopa.
Yeah, you're right.
They called it L-Dopa for a reason, because you got to be a dope to take it.
Oh, Tom, we could keep going, but I know we got to stop because I got more, and I'm sure you do too. But I appreciate you coming on the show. We'll have to do it again someday.
All right.
Okay, everybody. I'm Dr. Ben Edwards. You're the Cure. This will be on all the podcast platforms. Check out Dr. Cowan stuff if you want to, but I would highly encourage it. But at least start with the book. It's awesome. Okay, guys, we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.